Yo, where'd all the money go? The biggest news of all dropped Sunday night, LeBron to Lakers. And now everything flows in its wake. San Antonio's sky-high asking price for Kawhi Leonard, rumors of Portland guard Dame Lillard heading to L.A., Lonzo Ball's camp revealing a knee injury to possibly keep him off the trading block. Plus, guys who might have commanded $70 million plus in free agency just 2 years ago, guys like Marcus Smart, Zach LaVine, find a market without much free cash. The NBA offseason hits all the notes. Plugged into the Lakers and the NBA world is ESPN NBA reporter Chris Haynes, who joins us now. Chris, what was the Lakers' plan for the post-LeBron signing?
Well, I think you were seeing it, and I think a lot of people probably don't understand it. They're getting a lot of versatile defenders out there with LeBron, and also players who can handle the ball. At this stage of LeBron James' career, he doesn't want to go 1-on-5 anymore. He wants to have other guys who can facilitate the offense and make life easier for him. So when you look at those names, Lance Stevenson, JaVale McGee, KCP, Rajon Rondo, you have to look at it as far as where they want LeBron's trajectory to go as far as his career arc. So it's not a lot of big names, but they're names that can help him ease on as he makes this transition to the latter part of his career.
Chris, what's your understanding about whose vision this was? Was it LeBron's or was it Magic's?
Well, they came to an agreement. It was partly Magic, but obviously LeBron James knows the status and the plight of NBA players as they go into the twilight of their career. This is something he wanted. Look, there was about 3 aspects that were made LA Lakers attractive. The fact that they had cap space, they had young assets, and they had the flexibility to make some major moves going into the 2019 summer. And so LeBron James, in signing that 4-year deal, basically is letting everybody know that he's going to be patient. He's going to allow the Lakers to make moves because they can. They're not hamstrung like a lot of other teams. So it was partly a vision of Magic Johnson, but LeBron James, this is what he's been wanting, and he wants to preserve the rest of his career.
What can we expect next from the Lakers?
Look, I think they'll probably get one more signing in. You got names out there like Jamal Crawford, Wayne Ellington. You know, you think they have to get shooters. And while I do like some of the pieces that they've added, that's one area that they're lacking. They have KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's a great 3D catch-and-shoot player, but they need other shooters around LeBron James. So I think that will be their target for the remaining of this free agency junction.
All right, Chris, I want you to take a listen to the sound of LaVar Ball discussing the acquisition of LeBron James. Here it is.
LeBron got a 4-year deal, right?
Yeah.
I hope he gets 4 in a row.
Yeah.
But if not, I guarantee 2 when all my boys is on the Lakers with him.
Well, you know,
game over.
Since we're talking about championships, a lot of people are saying it's already a wrap for the rest of the league because the Warriors just signed Boogie.
The Warriors can sign Boogie, Prince, Michael Jordan, anybody they want. They still ain't gonna win with this team right here. Lakers with LeBron. You don't give my son the best player in the game. Don't think he gonna win no championships.
Chris, how are people in L.A., because there's history there, responding to this from LaVar Ball?
They're pretty much just ignoring it. That's been their stance for probably most of last season. Look, I understand what LeBron is saying. Let's just add clarity and add realness to the situation. You know, if the Lakers are going to have all the Ball sons on that squad, then they will at least give Angelo a summer league spot. That's not the case. So it's here nor say there. This is not going to happen. But look, when you're talking about championships, I think everybody is still looking at Golden State. I don't think anybody, as the roster constructed right now with the Lakers, will think that they have a realistic chance of contending with Golden State. At least not now. There's some other moves like Kawhi Leonard, who I'm told they still have an abandoned pursuit of, as well as the Clippers. That's one guy, if they get in the fold, then we could probably talk.
Okay, you mentioned Kawhi. What about Dame Lillard? Is that a legitimate possibility for the Lakers?
Not as of right now. I mean, they have to look into that. Look, their focus right now for the Los Angeles Lakers and the Clippers is Kawhi Leonard. So as soon as they exhaust all their options there, that's when they can start focusing and looking at other players. Damian Lillard, I would think, would be an option. I would hope that it would be an option if they do strike out on Kawhi. But I don't mean to go straight into Kawhi, but I want people to understand that if the Lakers don't put a package together that will suffice the Spurs, it's the chances of them signing Kawhi, if Kawhi is forced to go back to San Antonio, the chances of them signing him next summer goes down tremendously. And it's Kawhi is there for the taking right now for both Los Angeles teams. And I think if Kawhi goes into free agency, he has to go back to the Spurs for another year. If he goes into free agency in 2019, the Clippers will have a better chance at getting him than the Lakers. So I just want to throw that out there.
All right. Chris Haynes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. We are joined now in-house by former NBA player and now NBA analyst Ryan Hollins. He's going to give us a broader perspective on this NBA offseason. Now, Ryan, let's take a more in-depth look at the Spurs' asking price for Kawhi Leonard. What's your interpretation on the team's strategy?
The Spurs are going to ask for the house. If you hadn't taken note, Blake Griffin was just traded for 3 serviceable players, a first and second round pick. So when you take a look at what the Spurs are going to do, they're going to want no less. Now, if you're Kawhi's camp, now you have to push it even more. He had to actually come out and voice that he wanted to play in L.A. He wanted to go home. Now the Spurs have a problem they've never dealt with before. They actually have to trade Kawhi Leonard now. And now Kawhi may have to bump it up to another level if he doesn't want to go back to San Antonio. Maybe saying he'll sit out the season. He's definitely not going to play there. And these are problems, like I said earlier, dude, they have never dealt with this. This is uncharted territory, and especially sending him to a Western Conference contender in L.A. because if he joins with LeBron James, that could quite easily be a championship this year, even with Golden State on the market.
Yeah. All right, so you're a guy who has been in the NBA for years. So I think from an outside perspective, we often say, okay, Kawhi Leonard can orchestrate this, that he's in control. Is that true? What control does Kawhi Leonard have in this play?
Well, you would hope that all parties come along. And essentially, we've all got to be grown-ups here and just make something happen. So Kawhi, yes, he can be a bad sport, which unfortunately he would have to be. And the guy's one of the most quiet players that I've ever played against. He'd make a huge play and then just come back and be cool, calm, and collected. In San Antonio, they definitely don't have leverage either, because if you bring a poor situation into the locker room, which they had last year, that could be I don't want to say a demise of the season, but a cloud over San Antonio in which they've never had. So you hope that all sides can get along and they can get a respectable deal done. But, asking for the entire 4 young Lakers and their assets, just wasn't a realistic deal. But business-wise, you ask for more, you get half of what you thought you were going to get, and you end up winning at the end of the day. So San Antonio is going to play this out as well as they can.
What is your response to the theories that the Lakers should just wait a year and have Kawhi Leonard sign and not have to give up the house to get him in a trade?
Yeah, you get dangerous. And I talked to Rich. You get dangerous with that. And I talked to Rich Paul, in LeBron's camp, and he said, yeah, we'll just wait a year and we'll be in a better position the next year. But you saw what happened with the commitment of Paul George, saying, you guys thought you had me, you took me for granted, and now I went with loyalty. Even though we had a disappointing season the first time around, these are the guys who came back around and stuck out their necks for me. So if you're the Lakers, you want to show Kawhi Leonard that you're willing to stick out your neck for him and that he's that important. And even with the injury, you were with him. As all NBA players, there was somebody in the gym when we were playing AAU basketball, youth basketball, and those guys are still in our circles to this day. So that loyalty, even in today's NBA, still means something to a guy like a Kawhi that's injured, and it still is a risk to pick him up and move him for a young asset.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at the broader scope of NBA free agency, because you got guys like Marcus Smart or Clint Capella with the Rockets, who probably a couple years ago could have commanded $70+ million on the open market. And now they're staring at so few teams who actually have cash to pay them. As a former player, what do you do if you're one of those guys and the market doesn't look like what you thought it would look like?
You hope you have a good camp around you. You think about a Nerlens Noel who passed up on about $70 million to take a minimum contract this year. And unfortunately, those guys had amazing years. In the last year, you just saw guys getting, I don't want to say unrealistic, but great contracts for the timing. So free agency is all about timing. Fellas, please be patient. Don't mess up on your money. Humble yourself, go back, prove yourself, take a good contract, a 1-year, maybe 2-year deal, and hit free agency at the right time. And unfortunately, in Clint Capella's stance, this is the worst time for centers. We couldn't be more undervalued than in history of the NBA. You always want to have, 4, almost to 6, 7 footers on your lineup. And a guy like Clint Capella was a max player in any other NBA. And now you saw DeMarcus Cousins signing 1 year for the mid-level exception. Dwight Howard, 1 year, mid-level exception. Dwight Howard would walk into a $60 or $70 million contract in any other time in the NBA.
All right. Thanks, Ryan Hollins, NBA analyst. Appreciate your time.
Anytime.
Coming up, chaos in the quarterfinals of the world's biggest sporting event. We're going to be live in Moscow. 2 weeks in a flooded cave system. Workers have begun drilling holes deep into the rock and installing pipes with hopes of creating a dam that will allow the safe rescue of the 12 boys and their coach. The boys are all in good condition, but there's a growing sense of urgency to rescue because of a monsoon expected in the region by Sunday. U.S. Congressman Jim Jordan from Ohio is denying claims by multiple former Ohio State wrestlers who say Jordan, then an assistant wrestling coach, covered up knowledge that a former Ohio State doctor regularly groped athletes. Richard Strauss, who died by suicide in 2005, has been accused of groping male athletes from 14 different Ohio State sports. Congressman Jordan has acknowledged that Strauss used the same shower area as athletes, but says he was unaware of the abuse. Today in the B block, I promise you this is not at all what the World Cup quarterfinals were supposed to look like. England refusing to fold in penalties. Russia beating Spain. Plenty to see there. We also have Sweden and Croatia, but no Germany, no Portugal, no Argentina. Beginning tomorrow with France against Uruguay, the World Cup quarterfinals are here. And we are now joined live from Moscow by ESPN's senior writer, Gab Marcotti. Gab, what's the biggest story live on the ground right now?
Wow, Kate, I mean, you mentioned so many. I think overall, sports-wise, it's the absolute debacle, the collapse of Germany, not just the fact that they went out, but the way it actually happened. But, I mean, beyond that, obviously, Argentina also a meltdown. Russia's a tremendous run to this stage with them knocking out Spain was something I think few had anticipated. And I think overall, just the general sense that, the gap between the traditional superpowers and the rest of the field is nowhere near what it used to be.
And do you feel that the vibe on the ground there is that Russia has managed to get into these quarterfinals on merit?
Certainly not among the Russian football fans. I mean, they're very much gung-ho and very much into this. Look, my impression is they were drawn into a very poor group to begin with. They played a physical defensive style against some pretty bad teams. They beat teams that, apart from Egypt, but then Mohamed Salah was injured, teams they generally expected to beat. And then, they pulled off this masterpiece against Spain. But remember, they did it by playing ultra defensive. Spain missed some chances and ultimately was on penalties. Personally, I don't see anything sinister to it right now anyway, if that's what you're driving at.
All right, so tomorrow's match between France and Uruguay kicks off the quarterfinals, and there seems to be some news coming out of Uruguay's camp with the health of Cavani. What is the latest on his calf injury?
Well, he's still very much touch and go. I mean, it's one of those situations, I think, with that type of injury, you're really going to end up evaluating him in the morning and seeing how he is. It's not something that you're necessarily going to aggravate. But then again, it's a World Cup quarterfinal, so if you have to run a risk, you might just be tempted to do it.
Who's the favorite at this point? We mentioned all of the favorites coming in who are now out of the World Cup. Who would you say is the favorite at this stage in the game?
So here's the thing. Obviously, one side of the draw, because of the upsets early on, is simply much, much tougher than the other. So Brazil, Belgium, and France, for my money, probably maybe they're the three strongest teams left in the competition, but they're all on the same size of the draw, so they're going to knock each other out. On the other side, you've got England, you have Croatia, possibly the front runners from that side. For me, it's whoever gets out of the Brazil side of the draw, and I think on paper, I'd go with Brazil right now.
Now, you're standing in front of that beautiful shot of Moscow right there, and I'm curious as to what the response has been to the quality of tournament that Russia has been able to put on, speaking not of the quality of the football, but the quality of the infrastructure that they've put on and the tournament in general.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think speaking to the Russians here, they're not surprised. They're like, wait, what were you concerned about? This is fine. This is normal. I had a taste of this myself last summer when I was here for the Confederations Cup. I think in terms of the foreign media, we got those doom and gloom stories about hooligans going and fighting in the woods and coming in and ruining the games. And, we had stories about racism, which thankfully haven't materialized yet. So I think a lot of people are pleasantly surprised in terms of the infrastructure, the logistics. These cities are spick and span. I mean, right in these streets behind me where I'm talking to you now, Kate, people come by and they sweep the streets every 6 to 8 hours. They really want to put on a good show, and I think they've succeeded in that part. Now, whether it stays like this after the World Cup, who knows?
All right, thanks, Gab. Much more with Gab Marcotti and the ESPN FC crew today at 5 p.m. on ESPN2. Sweden plays England on Saturday, but former Swedish star Zlatan Ibrahimovic isn't on the squad. He does, however, now play for the LA Galaxy, and this year he sat down for and posed with ESPN the magazine's The Body Issue.
The first time I noticed when I became famous was the first time I touched the football. I said, I'll take over. I'm like the wine, the older the better. The age is just a number. It's all in your head, how strong you are, how young you are, and how you prepare yourself. I do a lot of training. I prepare very well, and I like it because it drives me. It never makes me satisfied because when I feel good, I want to feel better.
And it's going to fall for Ibrahimovic! Oh, come on! Come on! LAFC have just been Zlatan.
I need to be angry. I need to be very angry. Then I bring out my things that you will not expect in a good way, not in a bad way. And I see things that is difficult to describe. I see moments where I can see holes in the game where I can use, and then I can see the vision to second and the third step, what will happen, and I predict those things.
I heard, we want Zlatan, and I gave them Zlatan.
I like to do where you put a stamp and where people say, wow, that was something different. Because I don't like to do things like everybody else. I want the reaction to be where people will remember it. I think I'll make Body Issue very popular, that's for sure. They will get something nobody else got, so I'll give them that for free.
Body 10, a decade of ESPN, the magazine's Body Issue, debuts tonight on ESPN at 7 Eastern. And coming up, a love story with a sports twist. On a recent flight, one passenger asked another, a young woman, to switch seats. The woman obliged and took her new seat next to a guy she, of course, didn't know. Over the course of the flight, the passenger who initially asked for the switch watched in rapture as the two people sitting in front of her seemed to hit it off. Now, the passenger started live tweeting about the two, and eventually 250,000 people were tuned in, watching this first meeting, this potential love story, unfold in real time.
We couldn't have picked two better romantic leads. They were both athletic and cute, and they struck up a conversation immediately.
I walked on a plane just ready to get home and ended up sitting next to a lovely girl I had such a great time with on the flight.
The story took a twist when former U.S. men's national soccer team player and Fox broadcaster Stu Holden sent the following tweet from Russia. Can't believe that while I'm covering the biggest event of my career, World Cup, I've been upstaged by my brother falling in love on an airplane, hashtag plane bay, hashtag hunky plane guy. All right, that's right. While Stu Holden, former national team player, is in Russia covering the World Cup, his baby brother is stealing the headlines. Now, we can pull at least two lessons from this story. One, the future of reality TV might just be this: live action paparazziing on Insta and Snap. And number two, most importantly, always agree to switch seats when someone asks on a plane. Now, from experience, I'd say 80% of people live by this rule. But to the 20% who don't, what's the deal? Not only are you losing out on easy life karma points, but you also just come across as selfish and rude. And the ironic thing is that the people who say no to seat switch requests are probably the same people who would most relish the 15 minutes of fame just dropped on this couple. So always switch seats when people ask, okay? It's just the right thing to do. I'm Kate Fagan, sitting in for Bob Lee. That'll do it for Outside the Lines. NFL Live is next.